Up next in the broadcast, over 30 passengers remain missing over the deadly Sewol-ho ferry tragedy, and the ongoing investigation continues to uncover evidence of bribery, corruption, and fraud. South Korea's top diplomat, Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se, warns that the increasing rivalry in Northeast Asia may lead to an armed conflict as Japan continues its attempt to secure more military power. Corporate profits sag in the nation, and the number is even worse when Samsung Electronics is taken out of the equation. However, some sectors did show surprising jumps. Primetime News begins now. Hello and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Sean Lim.
And I am Kang Chae-ri in Seoul. 3 weeks have passed since the Sewol-ho ferry capsized off the southwestern coast of Korea, and over 30 passengers still remain missing.
For more, we now turn to our Kim Ji-yeon, who joins us now. So the search for the missing continues, but the ongoing investigation has uncovered more unsavory details about the ferry's operator, and this time about its safety record.
That's right. The Cheongjin Marine Company was found to have the highest number of accidents in Korea for the past 5 years. The Korea Coast Guard says that the ferry operator had 6 accidents from 2009 to 2013, accounting for 10% of all passenger ship accidents. And it seems that the captain of the Sewol-ho ferry, Lee Jun-seok, was also accident prone. 3 years ago, he was first mate on a ship that abruptly stopped in the West Sea and experienced a 5-hour blackout due to a defect in the electrical power system in the ship's engine room. And this could have resulted in something very similar to the Sewol-ho disaster, given that the ferry was carrying close to 650 people. And during the incident, passengers were told to stay put without an emergency escape, just like those in the Sewol-ho ferry. And do note that 9 out of the 10 victims of the Sewol-ho ferry were wearing life jackets, waiting for rescuers in vain. But there was no penalty to then First Mate Lee, but instead he was promoted as captain of the Sewol-ho ferry.
A lot of problems with the captain guy. So authorities are going ahead with their investigations, presuming that the ferry operator had knowledge that there were problems with the vessel. That's right.
Prosecutors found that the ferry operator tried to sell the Sewol-ho ferry in March for about $16 million. And at least one buyer from the Philippines showed interest. And during that sale, the ferry operator did not reveal to its broker that it may be unstable and will not be able to recover its balance since it was renovated to fit in more cargo and passengers. Well, the prosecutors are trying to prove the ferry operator knew of the faults beforehand and wanted to sell it anyways.
Well, Jian, I'm sure many people are wondering, how could the ferry operator's negligence go unnoticed? Who is regulating?
Well, prosecutors believe that some of the wrongdoing has to do with the safety inspectors of the ferry operators, and that some were bribed in exchange for lax inspections. An official of the Korea Shipping Association, which oversees the shipping industry in general, was arrested today over suspicions of taking bribes from ferry operators like the Cheongjin Marine Company in exchange for overlooking insurance fraud. And you have to know that the nonprofit organization is in charge of inspecting and certifying the vessels in behalf of the government.
All right, thank you, Jian, so much for that update. Now, the public anger and outrage, of course, over the Sewol-ho ferry disaster is prompting the government to act swiftly and fill in gaps in safety regulations.
The government has announced plans to introduce an inspector within the Maritime Ministry to oversee not only the safety management of vessels, but also the areas in which they operate. During a cabinet meeting on Wednesday, officials also discussed shifting the current maritime safety system that focuses on emergency response to one that focuses more on preventing accidents. Under the changes, a presidential decree would determine who is subject to safety inspections and when a vessel operator is required to submit its safety records. The measures are meant to address criticism that mismanagement and lax oversight led to last month's ferry accident. And with the June local elections less than a month away, we want to know whether and how much of an influence the ferry disaster will have on the outcome.
For more, Professor Han Kyu-sup is joining us. Professor, welcome. Now, political parties seem to be distancing themselves from the government that's sort of being blamed for poor safety management. What else are you seeing as immediate impact of the ferry disaster?
Well, I think this accident has certainly caused the president's approval rating to go down substantially. At least there's roughly about a 10 percentage point drop from within 2 weeks or so. So this will have a substantial impact on what the president can actually do in the next couple of months. So because the approval ratings have dropped substantially, it will be that much more difficult for the president to pursue and implement any of her policy plans in the at least in the next 6 months or so.
Well, speaking of President Park, she had to apologize twice for the disaster. How much of an effect does the president's approval rating go towards local election candidates?
I think it will have at least some effects because the Sewol-ho party's approval ratings, a lot of it has to do. They have maintained a fairly high level of support from the public in the last year and a half, and much of that has to do with the fact that the president's approval rating was really high. So I think, since now the president's approval ratings have dropped substantially, it will have a fair amount of impact on the Sewol-ho party candidates' electability.
Do you think people will vote more or less because of the ferry disaster? And then how do you think the voter turnout will decide the outcome of the elections?
Well, I think the whole accident affects the electoral outcome, can possibly affect the electoral outcome in 3 different ways. One is that certainly it will have there will be some incumbent advantage because basically the campaigning had stopped for about almost 3 weeks because of the accident. That means the challenging candidates lost a lot of time to catch up with the incumbents. So there'll be some incumbent advantage. Another ways in which that this accident will affect the electoral outcome is that the whole issue of safety has become the most prominent and sort of defining issue in the upcoming election. So whoever is perceived as being able to better handle the issue of safety will have a significant advantage.
Well, let's zoom in on some of these terms related to safety and the Sewol disaster in relation to the Seoul mayoral elections. This has come up especially since last week's subway crash in Seoul alarmed a lot of people, and also some of the controversial comments from Chung Mong-jun's son regarding the Sewol disaster raised some ire. How do you think the support ratings will fare against this backdrop between the main two candidates?
Well, I think in my view, the accident will favor the current mayor and the incumbent because for several reasons. One is the campaign had to stop for 3 weeks. I think Chung Mong-jun had a lot more to prove than the current mayor. So certainly that's an advantage for the incumbent. And also, like you said, basically the controversial remarks made by the Chung Mong-jun's son, also it's a problem for Chung Mong-jun. And if he becomes the nominee of the Sewol-ho party. So for those reasons, I believe the incumbent will probably benefit from the whole accident.
Okay, Professor Han, thank you so much for your insight and comments tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Kirby's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Che-ri from the heart of Seoul.
News begins now.
Primetime news, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Seoul's foreign minister says he wouldn't rule out the possibility of a military collision in Northeast Asia. The comments come as Japan strengthened its military ties with NATO through a new partnership deal during Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's trip to Brussels. Yudian reports.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yun Byung-se says a military conflict could be on the cards in Northeast Asia, a region plagued by historical, regional, and security-related tensions. Speaking at the International Peace Institute in New York City on Tuesday, Yun expressed his grave concern over the increasing rivalry in Northeast Asia. He noted China's emerging power, Japan's aim to make a comeback as a regional power, and Russia taking a tougher stance against the West. Minister Yun said this, coupled with North Korea's ongoing nuclear threats, is creating serious changes to the geopolitical sphere of Northeast Asia, as well as to the Korean peninsula. The foreign minister's words of warning come as Japan tries to secure more military power. On Tuesday, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe signed a new partnership agreement with NATO that will deepen Tokyo's cooperation with the Western Military Alliance in areas including counter-piracy and humanitarian assistance. Speaking to ambassadors from the 28 NATO nations in Brussels, Abe also called for increased military freedom in Northeast Asia. Expressing concern over China's heavy military spending, the Japanese leader reiterated his wish to exercise the right to defend an ally under armed attack. Under the current interpretation of the constitution imposed after the Second World War, Japan is unable to settle international disputes using military force, even if it comes under attack. Abe said a panel of security experts is currently looking into changing this, with the government expected to come up with a policy on global peacekeeping operations. Yudian, Arirang News.
The human rights violations perpetrated by the North Korean regime are well documented by now. To help the North to clean up its act, the UN Human Rights Council has adopted a report with 268 recommendations, but it didn't take too long for Pyongyang to flatly reject a good portion of them. Park Ji-won reports.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has provided North Korea with 268 recommendations to improve its dire human rights conditions. They came in a report adopted on Tuesday in Geneva during the Council's Universal Periodic Review session on North Korea. The extensive report urges Pyongyang to close its notorious prison camps and end public executions. It also called on the North Korean regime to stop its systematic and widespread human rights violations, which include forced labor. North Korea immediately dismissed substantial portions of the report, rejecting 83 of the recommendations outright. The rejected recommendations include closing down any political prison camps, eradicating state-sponsored discrimination based on the political backgrounds of families, and cooperating with the International Criminal Court. North Korea's UN ambassador Seo Se-pyong said the recommendations came out of the international community's misunderstanding and prejudices against the regime. Regarding the remaining 185 recommendations, North Korea said it will review them and respond before the Council's regular session scheduled for September, during which time the full report will be made public. The Council's Universal Periodic Review is held for 2-week periods, 3 times a year. During each session, 14 countries undergo reviews. Pyongyang took the opportunity to lash out at the United States. The North State media said the U.S. is the worst country in terms of human rights infringement. It called the United States a living hell, full of rampant racial discrimination and gun accidents, where only a select few get to enjoy material success. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Fresh off of a 4-day holiday weekend, the Korean won soared to its highest level against the U.S. dollar in nearly 6 years on Wednesday on strong exports and the weakening greenback. finishing the trading day at more than 1,022 won, which is up nearly 8 won from last Friday. The won's gain comes as the U.S. dollar depreciated against major currencies on weaker than expected economic growth in the first quarter. Analysts also attribute the won's recent appreciation to Korea's prolonged current account surplus. Global investment banks expect the won to remain strong against the dollar for now, as Seoul currently allows for the won's appreciation. There is speculation, however, that authorities may intervene to prevent the won from breaching the 1,020 level. Well, despite the currency's strength, Korea's biggest companies reported weaker earnings last year compared to a year earlier, and that's also dented corporate tax collection. Their profits, however, are expected to improve this year. Hwang Ji-ae tells us more.
Corporate Korea has turned in a disappointing scorecard for 2013. The combined pre-tax profits of 87 affiliates of the nation's 10 major conglomerates dropped almost 15% to around $50 billion last year from 2012, according to data compiled by market researcher FN Guide on Wednesday. When excluding Samsung Electronics, the nation's most profitable company, the drop is even more pronounced at more than 30%. The sagging profitability of local companies also hit corporate tax collections. The government's tax revenues from the companies totaled only $10 billion in 2013, down nearly 6% from a year earlier. While citing the slowdown in emerging markets for the reason behind the disappointing performance of Korean companies last year, market watchers expect a 20% growth in corporate profits this year, helped by moderate recovery in advanced economies. They add, however, that the double-digit growth expected in 2014 is largely due to the sluggish performance in the past 3 years.
Actually, we have not seen a significant signal for Korean exporters' earnings to turn around 2014. But I just want to point out the base effect first, because it's been lowered down too much.
Also, market watchers point out that a slowing Chinese economy could hurt the profitability of Korean companies this year. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
Thailand's Constitutional Court has dealt a decisive blow to Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra, ordering her to step down for abuse of power.
With more on that and other international stories, we now turn to Paul Yee standing by at the News Center. Paul, so starting with Thailand, can you tell us more about the court's final ruling?
Well, the court found Yingluck guilty of violating constitutional law when she transferred the National Security Council chief to another post back in 2011. The Prime Minister appeared in court on Tuesday to defend her actions, rejecting allegations that her party had benefited from the move. 9 cabinet ministers who were implicated in the transfer were also ordered to step down from their posts. In the meantime, Thailand's Commerce Minister has been nominated to replace Yingluck as acting Prime Minister. The verdict is likely to stir up more unrest in the nation amid Yingluck's supporters following 6 months of anti-government protests that have paralyzed the government. The U.S. has announced it is sending a team of experts to Nigeria to help rescue the more than 200 schoolgirls who were kidnapped last month. According to the State Department, the American team will include military personnel, law enforcement officers, and hostage negotiators. They'll be based in the U.S. Embassy in Abuja, working with Nigerian forces to help track down the hundreds of teenage girls. On Monday, a video surfaced featuring the leader of the Islamist group Boko Haram, claiming responsibility for the mass abductions and saying they plan to sell the girls into slavery. As of Tuesday, police and residents say 8 more girls were kidnapped in the northeast by Boko Haram gunmen. Meanwhile, protests have spread across the Nigerian capital, joining the scores of other rallies around the world, calling for the swift return of the young students. Many are criticizing the government for responding too slowly and for not dealing with the Islamist militants sooner. The Ukrainian government says it is not in favor of negotiating with a pro-Russian separatist, rejecting proposed amnesty for the rebels as the country slides further towards war. Ukrainian security forces, however, were able to retake the southeastern port city of Mariupol without further bloodshed. The pro-Russian militants had seized control of City Hall last week, but reportedly left on Wednesday without any clear reasons. Ukraine's acting Interior Minister Arsen Avakov said more than 30 separatists were killed a day before in fighting around Slavyansk, which has become a stronghold for pro-Russian groups. Meanwhile, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has rolled out new talks to defuse rising tensions in Ukraine. Lavrov also criticized Kiev for pushing forward with a presidential election scheduled for May 25th, despite the military being deployed against part of the population. And turning now to Central America, a top court in El Salvador has ordered the arrest and capture of former President Francisco Flores. He's facing a host of corruption charges, including embezzlement, illegal enrichment, and disobedience. Ex-President Flores, who ruled from 1999 to 2004, has been accused of misappropriating more than $15 million donated by the Taiwanese government for earthquake relief efforts. Upon the court's ruling, El Salvador called on Interpol to help capture the former president, who is believed to be in Panama. Flores has denied misusing the Taiwanese funds and argued they were processed through official government channels. That wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. We start with golf. South Korea's Park In-bi remained the world's top-ranked ladies golfer, while Tiger Woods also maintained his top spot on the men's side. But the question is, can they stay there? Park came in at number 1 for the 56th week in a row, but faces major competition from a surging Stacey Lewis, who nabbed the number 2 spot from Lydia Ko after just a week. Meanwhile, on the men's side, a major shakeup may be in the cards. With the Players' Championship opening and Tiger Woods recovering from injury, Adam Scott, Henrik Stenson, Bubba Watson, and Matt Kuchar, ranked 2nd to 5th, can unseat Woods with a win at TPC Sawgrass. And heading to the NBA, Oklahoma City Thunder star Kevin Durant was named the league's regular season MVP, beating out Miami's LeBron James in the process. In his emotional acceptance speech, Durant gave thanks to those who supported him throughout the years, saying the most touching words for his mother. Fighting tears, he thanked her for sacrificing so much for his success. The honor was well-deserved after carrying his team all season long, while scoring 32 points a game, which also earned him his 4th scoring title. And moving on to world football, Real Madrid forward Cristiano Ronaldo has been given the nod as the best goal scorer in Champions League history. In the poll conducted by UEFA, the 29-year-old star earned 26%, edging out rival Lionel Messi by a mere percentage point. Both beat out Real legend Raul Gonzalez, who's the competition's top goal scorer with 71 goals. Now we go to baseball, starting in the MLB. Los Angeles Dodgers ace Clayton Kershaw returned to the mound after spending over a month on the disabled list. In the away game against the Washington Nationals, Kershaw struck out 9 batters in 7 scoreless innings, earning the W in the 8-3 Dodger win. Now it's the 2nd win in as many starts for the 26-year-old, who sat on the DL for the first time in his career with a strained back. And wrapping it all up, let's get to Wednesday's top KBO matchup. The NC Dinos took a road trip to Mokdong to face the Nexen Heroes. Now we go to the first inning. It's NC playing small ball, and they get 3 runs there before Ji Seok-hoon's home run. He hits 3. It's a 3-run shot. It's 6-0 now. Bottom of the frame, Nexen's Park Byung-ho. He hits us home run. It's 6-2. But NC can't keep the ball in the park. Na Sung-bum, he homers in the 2nd and also the 3rd as part of a back-to-back home run streak by NC. They dominate this one offensively throughout, and the game's called due to rain. NC wins 24-5. And looking at the other games, we have Samsung beating SK 5-4. Lotte beats Tusan 10-6. Meanwhile, Hanwha and LG are still in this one in the bottom of the 9th. It's 6-6. That's all I have for now. This has been Stephen Che. I'll see you back here later for more from the world of sports.
It was a clear day here in Seoul, but it seems we'll get a mix of sunshine and showers throughout the week.
And our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center is going to tell us more. Bo-kyung, let's start with the conditions at Chindo.
Well, guys, starting today, neap tides have returned near Chindo. This is why waves are down at 1.4 meters and wind speeds have also dropped to 6.8 meters per second. Morning showers are forecast nationwide tomorrow, and Friday and Saturday are shaping up to be sunny. However, another round of light rain may be in store for us on Sunday. Now, moving on to our satellite map, clouds will gradually move in, leading to late-night sprinkles over the central regions. Total precipitation of less than 10 millimeters is forecast to fall through tomorrow morning, so please be sure to have an umbrella handy. Now, hopefully, this round of showers will take away the dry weather advisories that have been issued along most of the eastern coastline. Looking ahead at Thursday's readings, Seoul and Gwangju hit 21 degrees, while Daegu and Busan reached the mid-20s. Taking a look at other places, Daejeon and Jeju peak at 20 and 19 degrees, while Dokdo tops out at 14. That's all the updates I have for you now, and back to you guys.
And that does it for us for Primetime News. I'm Sean Lim.
And I am Kang Chae-ri. Thank you very much for being with us today, and hope you join us again tomorrow.